Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast with your host, Michael Sapersky, where we take you deep into the world of elite consultants.
Hey, it's Michael Sapersky, and today I'm very excited to have Perry Marshall joining us. Perry, welcome.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, and love to be talking to all the consultants and independent brain forces out there who, take their knowledge and fix other people's problems. So thanks for having me today.
Pleasure. So, Perry, you're best known as the author of the Definitive Guide to Google AdWords. Then it was a Facebook ads book and author of the 80/20 sales and marketing book, which is fantastic. But what are you spending your time doing most of these days?
Well, I'm splitting my time between two things. One thing is really in the last year or two, I've been putting a heavy emphasis on higher end client work and getting equity in companies. I've got some interesting stories about that we can talk about. And then I have another project, which is called the Evolution 2.0 project. And it's really a search for the next Tesla or Einstein. And, it's a hard science and technology project. And so that also gets a fair amount of my time. And so, the things people know me for, those are kind of the tip of the iceberg, and the things I'm doing now definitely connect to those. But I think as is often the case, like the real business isn't the business you see. If you watch that McDonald's movie that came out, I forget what it was called. It's like, well, we're not in the hamburgers business. We're in the real estate business. I think most sophisticated businesses are a different animal under the surface than on the outside.
Yeah, let's explore that a little bit more. So, you have books, you have courses, you do workshops, private consulting. So you've done a lot, right? And you continue to do a lot. How important do you feel it is for consultants to have like this wide variety of offering? Well,
I think inevitably, if you're a thought leader, you're going to be prolific. If you look at just kind of the list of, in the last 50 years, the major thought leaders in business, whether it was Peter Drucker or Zig Ziglar or Brian Tracy or Dan Kennedy or, any of these kind of older names that have been around a while, these guys produce a lot of stuff, and most people only know about a little bit of it. There's the old phrase, I don't know one way to get 30 customers a month, but I know 30 ways to get one customer a month. Now that in and of itself isn't all that 80/20 until you realize that, out of 30 different things, 2 of them are going to produce half of the clients. But in advance, you don't usually know what those are going to be. And so I think it's kind of inevitable. And we've all know the story and seen the situations where, they were like a stork standing on one leg and they had one source of customers and it dried up and like it was all over. Right. And so,
definitely.
So yeah, 80/20 is absolutely going to apply, and a very small fraction of those are going to produce most of the results, but you still got to cast a net far and wide, and you got to try stuff. And I think, anytime we get sort of caught with our pants down, it forces us to evolve. And that's happened to me many times. And actually this is one of the reasons I'm on a lot of podcasts. Podcasts sort of accidentally discovered me as you might expect, but then I started working with Interview Connections, and they help find you people. And that's actually been a good way to get customers. And it cuts across this huge variety of places that I wouldn't necessarily get it into from Google ads or Facebook ads or by selling books or whatever. It's really nice to have a wide variety of where customers come from. And quite honestly, that saved my ass several times. Like I've I've been banned from Facebook. Ironically, considering I wrote the world's best-selling book on Facebook advertising. Facebook doesn't really care about that. It's a big bureaucracy, right? And I've had trouble with Google slaps and really pretty much all the same stuff that anybody else does. And it's really nice. It's really nice when all of a sudden one day you wake up and something completely got nuclear vaporized and is gone, but you still have this other stuff that you can do. That's really good.
So really what I'm hearing you say is, between the books and the courses and the workshops and just like everything that you're doing, part of it is obviously testing. Part of it is just that you're prolific and you're creating lots of intellectual property, but it's also about just gaining greater exposure in the marketplace. And by putting out different kinds of materials and in different formats, you're reaching all kinds of different customers. And so really it's a bit of a diversification strategy more than it is necessarily about just trying to sell like an extra ebook or something along those lines, because the revenue that you generate from an ebook is obviously very different than the revenue you generate from a consulting client.
Yeah, and all of these things are rock, paper, scissors compared to each other. Each has certain great advantages and each has great disadvantages. So, you're talking about ebooks. 10 years ago, ebooks were super hot. And, I bet probably in my career, I probably made at least $1 million of revenue just selling PDF files, which is pretty nice. But, when the Kindle came along, it started really eating into that. And I saw the writing on the wall. And I also, so I have a funny story for you. This is probably 11 or 12 years ago. My roundtable member group, my highest member coaching membership, we all agreed or decided at our meeting that we all ought to have Wikipedia pages. Now, this is kind of stupid because I didn't really know anything about Wikipedia at the time, and I made all these assumptions that weren't really true. And so we agreed, well, we're going to do this. And so we knew that, you can't do it yourself. So you got to get somebody else. So, so we start down this road, and it was actually Glenn Livingston made my first Wikipedia page, and he puts it up. And about 2 days later, this big warning gets slapped across the top, and it says, "This appears to be a vanity entry by a non-notable person. Please supply sufficient references or this page will be deleted." Okay, well, now I thought, well, this shouldn't be a problem. I'm very well known in this industry. Everybody knows about Perry and Google AdWords and everything. But when I looked at the guidelines for references and citations, nothing that featured me met the criteria. My entire world existed out on the fringes and was not considered legit to any of the regular world. Okay. Because it was just all these blogs and affiliates and other marketers. And,
Right.
It's like, who cares if Jay Abraham thinks you're great? So what? Does USA Today or the Washington Post care about that? No. Does Wikipedia care about that?
Right.
No. As far as they're concerned, I don't exist. And so that page got deleted. Well, this didn't create an existential crisis, and I wasn't all distraught about the Wikipedia thing. However, I did get the message, and the message was, Perry, the world does not consider you to exist. Okay. You only exist in this fringy little corner of the world called internet marketing, which at the moment nobody really cares about. So, this was one of many reasons that I decided to go to a traditional publisher and get my Google book, in the bookstores. Now, basically I was trading away. So at the time I was selling a $50 ebook on which I made 90+% margins. Okay. And now we're going to turn this into an $18 bookstore book on which I make 10%, right? So the math is really bad. However, all of a sudden I had legitimacy, okay, published by Entrepreneur Press and everything. And as soon as that book came out, I got an interview in USA Today, and after a while, it was New York Times and everything. And I became a legitimate published author. And I literally traded revenue for longevity. Now, that trade-off exists in all kinds of ways in life. So if you think of whatever you're doing, like whatever kind of consulting you're getting, or however you get your gigs or whatever, if you think of it as rock, paper, scissors, then there's something that you're doing. It's got some like really great, amazing short-term advantage, but it's really terrible long-term, or vice versa. It's really terrible short-term, but it's really great in the long-term. Like that trade-off always exists in your life. And I think that you should just be conscious of whatever you're doing. If you have some really awesome short-term crack cocaine thing going on, and you're paying your bills and you're doing more than paying your bills, you really ought to ask the question, should I transform this in some way to not just be a hit of crack cocaine? Is there any way to trade this off into a more long-term thing? On the other hand, if everything you're doing is going to take 5 years to pay off, surely there's some adjustment that you can make where there's a little more short-term payoff and a little short-term gratification where you can even out some of the dips that happen. But everything I've done has always been biased towards the long-term view of things. And I feel like certainly in the internet marketing crowd, most people are biased towards the short term. And I think it's just disastrous. I mean, I can't count how many people I've seen just shipwreck their entire career. Like I know a guy, he did one of these, product launches, and he was very good at it, but a couple things went wrong, and he ends up, like, when it was all said and done, it didn't sell anywhere near what it was supposed to, and he owes all these affiliates $200,000, and he didn't make any money. Okay. And now he's like in debt $200,000 to all these people, and the only way to dig himself out is to go try and do it again, which,
Yeah. Perry, how has your marketing and sales approach changed as your business has grown?
Well,
because that's what I'm hearing you say, right? Is that if you're starting out, for somebody who's earlier stage and they need, very focused on generating revenue and income right now, they may approach things differently than if you already have a pipeline of business and you're looking at getting to the next level. So what have you seen in terms of your own business? How have you changed or thought differently, if you have, about your marketing and sales?
Well, I think it's a general truth that it usually takes you 2 years to get a business to really going. Usually the first 2 years are kind of rickety, no matter how good you are. Then you get after that point, well, several things. One thing, my biggest medium is email, and I have lots of people that love to read my emails. And my philosophy of email is every email you ever send should make the person want to open the next email that you send. If it creates an oh yuck or wow, that was a giant subtraction from the emotional bank account, then it's probably the wrong thing to be saying. I think as soon as you have some stability and, you're paying your bills or whatever, then I think your mindset should dig to, how can I dig a really deep trench? And how can I build a moat around my castle so that it's almost impossible for somebody to take me out? I mean, I think the biggest answer is moats around the castle, where you really are immune from competition. Because
what does that look like when you say moats around the castle? Paint that picture for us.
Okay. So unique selling proposition. Traditionally, a unique selling proposition is, the Domino's pizza, fresh, hot, pizza delivered to your door in 30 minutes or less guaranteed. That's what a unique selling proposition is. And, that was like a really great USP in 1975, man. Like that was awesome.
Yeah, built their business. Yeah.
It's not a particularly awesome USP now. And moat around your castle is fundamentally, well, how hard would it be for somebody down the street to do the same thing you're doing? Okay. It's like once you actually have some business and once that customers actually come to you, or once you found some little corner of the world where there was an unmet need and you started meeting it and now you have a business, how hard is it going to be for somebody to just like build a little restaurant right in front of your restaurant between the driveway, and the front door and just cut you off? Well, in a lot of businesses, it's really easy. Like, well, you do Facebook pay-per-click management. Well, so do 100,000 other people. So that's not really a moat around your castle. Now, the more things that you do that are difficult, then the bigger is the moat around your castle. Now, I think the ultimate moat around any castle in 21st century is network effect. Network effect is when eBay buyers generate more sellers and eBay sellers generate more buyers and Uber drivers get more riders and riders get more drivers and the pickup time keeps going lower and lower because there's more and more drivers and there's more and more people using the system. So the bigger the network gets, the more valuable the network gets. Now, really, that's the ultimate moat around the castle. That is the most desirable thing that you can have in the 21st century. And you look for it any way that you can possibly get it.
And Perry, how does that apply to a consulting business? How would you apply that network effect?
Okay. So first off, it applies in even small ways like Google reviews or Yelp reviews or anything like that, because any market only really wants just a very few choices. It doesn't want 100, like Houston, Texas does not. I'm sure Houston has 618 remodeling contractors, but Houston doesn't want 618 remodeling contractors. They'd be perfectly happy with 10.
Sure.
Right. And so if you're a remodeling contractor, which is only incrementally different from a consulting business, right? It's a service business. Well, then you need to be the one with the reviews and the stars, in whatever medium you exist in, right? And you need to get there. You need to get there first and start building it. And you get more clients and the clients get you more stars and the stars get you more clients. That's like the most rudimentary, elementary thing. Now, the next question should be, how can every client that I get create more value for every other client I already have, and vice versa? Well, that usually has to do with harnessing data and systems to where you're accruing an advantage, like you have more knowledge and more know-how, which also usually means digging deeper and deeper into a particular niche. So if you're a consultant and you like variety and you're in 10 different industries, but they have nothing to do with each other, you might want to steer your efforts so that maybe all of your clients are in manufacturing, and now you have this accumulated knowledge in manufacturing, and pretty soon, like, it's impossible for somebody else to know more about solving this problem for manufacturers than you. And so the momentum is on your side. And like, this used to be a minor thing, maybe 10 or 20 years ago. It's a major thing now. Because
what do you say though to the consultants that, I think this, like what you're mentioning is so true. And yet so many people have a real challenge around this, like really honing into that ideal client and being very, very specific. And the most common, kind of objection to this is, well, what about all the business that I might be leaving out? And what about all these other people that I could serve or I could add value to? How would you respond to that?
Okay. So 80-20 is fundamentally it's about saying no, and it's about saying disqualification. 80-20 says that sales and marketing is a disqualification process, not a convincing people process. So the first step of being 80-20, of doing 80-20, is saying, what am I not and who do I not serve? Okay. Now, a consultant by personality, by nature, is an open options, high optionality person. It's a lots of choices person. A consultant is a person who almost usually will want to have as many choices as they can, because what they do is they sit down with clients and they look at all these different choices and then they narrow it down to the best decision. But they always start with, like, what are all the options, right? And so it feels really disingenuous to yourself to close off options. But if you're going to specialize in manufacturing, then you're not in software and you're not in IT and you're not in pizza delivery and you're not like in all these other things. And you just have to decide, I'm not going to just, pick up any little gig that I can, like the pick up any little gig that you can. I mean, that's what you do when you're brand new and you'll just, trying to put diapers on your babies and stuff. But, you want to build a real business. And again, this gets into the conflict between the short term and the long term. I mean, sure, in the short term, just keep your options open, but in the long term, what you want is a moat around your castle. And I've lived this. So when Google AdWords was brand new, it was this giant Wild West. It's easy to forget that, back in 2005, most people only barely comprehended what was really going on when they typed a search engine into a search engine. Nobody knew that the entire English language was for sale and that you could bid on it. And so people started discovering this and they just started like creating businesses out of nowhere, out of nothing. Like if you could figure out a keyword and you could figure out something to sell them or some affiliate thing to sign up for, or somebody that had a product that you could ship, then man, like you just had a business overnight. And so I saw all these businesses just spring up between probably 2003 and 2008. It was just this massive influx of businesses. And then I watched all these people just get assassinated. They got Google slapped. They were made illegal. The competition came and ate them. I mean, it was like, it was a bloodbath, right? And so, for about 4 or 5 years, like there was all this crack cocaine going on. It was intoxicating and exhilarating. And then I watch all these people just get murdered. And it was the people that took a long-term approach and a long-term view of things who said, okay, I'm here now. I'm going to pound the stake deep, 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 deep in the ground, to where nobody can take me out. And I'm going to opt for stability over optionality. I'm going to say no to a lot. So I did this like for about 5, 6, 7 years. I pretty much ate, drank, slept Google AdWords. I mean, it got kind of boring after a while. Okay. Like how much is there that you can possibly say about, bidding on a keyword and writing an ad and setting a bid price? I mean, really? Okay.
Right.
But like any which way that we could, right? And so it's like, I'm going to be the guy. I'm going to be the only, as far as I could possibly, control this thing. I mean, I am just going to pound this stake. If I have to pound this stake 200 feet into the ground, that's fine. Well, but Perry, you know how to do all this other stuff and they're just going to pigeonhole you. Look, it's way better to be narrowly pigeonholed and known than, be able to do anything and nobody knows who you are. And the truth is, I get lots and lots and lots of people coming in on Google AdWords and I would fix their AdWords problem. They're going, wow, you're awesome. And then I go, well, what else can we solve? Well, they always had 100 other problems.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's how I kept myself from going insane. I had all these clients and I'm doing all these other things. We're doing copy, or we're fixing some employee problem in their business. Like, I know how to do lots of things, but as long as I'm known for one thing, I'm great. That's fine.
That's the way that you got the attention of the marketplace and became known, and initially, won that first sale. And then from there, as you're sharing, which I think is so wise and such a great message for people to be hearing, just because you're, putting out there publicly that you're an expert in one area doesn't mean that when someone becomes a client or when they reach out to you, doesn't mean that you can't add value for them in another area, right? If it makes sense for you to do so. While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early-stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early-stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO.
That's right. So there's a yin and a yang between being the generalist and the specialist. And being the specialist is the spear point. It gets you in, right? Mm-hmm. You have to have a sharp spear to penetrate, whatever market that you're trying to get into. Okay. Then when you have a relationship with a client and you demonstrated your extreme competence with the thing that you're known for, then you can show them how smart you really are by solving other problems. And as long as you're careful not to take on things that you don't actually know how to do, which is tempting. I think we've all gotten ourselves into that before, right? As long as you don't succumb to that, you're going to be fine. And your work will still be interesting, but just be known for one thing. People can't remember 5 things about you. They can remember one thing.
Yeah, it's a really great point. I've watched your business grow significantly over the years, Perry. What's been key for you to managing that growth? I mean, what's kind of going on at Planet Perry in terms of systems and people that makes the biggest impact? Like, just take us kind of behind the curtain for a moment. How do you run this business, and how have you kept up with growth?
Well, this is going to be a little different for different people, but I learned the hard way, like what things you can scale and what things you can't. Tell us
about that.
About 8 years ago, maybe, the recession had just happened. We were weathering it pretty well. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do something really contrarian. And instead of contracting like everybody else, I'm going to expand. And, my rationale was, well, everybody else in the world is retreating. So if I advance, then eventually when this thing comes back, then I'm really going to be ahead of everything. And so I hired more staff. I brought in some expensive, highly skilled people. And I said, I'm kind of in the middle of everything, and I'm going to get out of the middle of everything. And I'm going to have this thing run more on systems, and it's going to be more scalable. Well, I would say that effort was about 50% effective. Okay. Now, here's what was effective. What was effective was, It took a long time, but I got things highly systemized. I had a marketing manager who did most of the heavy lifting. I got staff doing most of that stuff. I have a copywriter who's one of my best friends in the world, and like he can finish my sentences. And like, if you have to
Nice.
put out a lot of content and you have somebody that can sound exactly like you and finish your sentences because he thinks like me, like I stand behind it, everything he writes, because I believe in it, because it's all good. Right. So I got that in place, and that was really great. But what I also found was, there's a limit to how much you can replace Perry. And if you try too hard to replace somebody who can't be replaced because they have too much of a unique skill set, because the truth is I'm in a personality business. And if you take Perry away, it becomes much less valuable. That's just the truth of it. Not all businesses are like that, but my business is. Okay. My business is not any sort of a McDonald's, and I found out you can't make it into a McDonald's. Well, so I really pushed the boundaries of, how much you can do that. And I spent a lot of money and kind of wasted a lot of money trying to do that, until I kind of, got a more balanced perspective and figure out what can I outsource and what can I not. Now I'm going to guess that for the typical person that's listening to this, 50 to 75% of what you can do can be outsourced, systematized, blah, 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 to a great extent. Okay. And I'm going to guess that 25% of what you do is probably very, very hard to outsource. And you need not resent the fact that you probably can't cut yourself out of it. That's just probably true with, knowing what I know about your audience.
Sure.
Michael, I think that's the case.
I would say I think those are fair percentages.
And so man, I've tried a lot of different things. I found out there's some problems you just can't throw money at and solve. Also, I'll tell you another interesting story. I think you'll find this interesting. I had a really interesting interview that I did for my Renaissance Club members about a month ago with a guy named Casey Graham. Now, this is a very instructive story in a lot of ways. So Casey came to one of I do this thing called a 4-man intensive, and it's 4 people for 2 days. And so we really roll up our sleeves and we dig into people's businesses. It's not like a seminar. Okay. It's like a really intensive workshop. So Casey was doing this kind of guru business, basically. Like he was a guru in a particular industry, and he had this little software as a service business on the side. He comes to my thing and he's like, "So Perry, what should I do?" And like, well, I can do guru business in my sleep, and I could advise you to the nth degree about it. And I gave him some advice about it, but he said, "You know what you should really do, Casey, is this software as a service company that you've got. You need to grow that thing and sell it, because you'll make like serious money if you do that. And if you do it right, you'll never have to work for anybody again." And he's like, "Okay." He didn't really expect that. I said, "Look, I am a guru. I knew that gig, but the equities in a software as a service business, that's really the business you should build." He did it. And about, 2 years ago, he sold that company for like a lot of money. Like never have to work for anybody else ever again money. He sold that business. Well, this is where it gets interesting. So, man, congratulations, dude. Like ticker tape parade. Yay. So Casey sells his company. In fact, he was really smart. He got a deal where like, hey, once you guys own it, I'm out. I'm not going to stick around. Like I know lots of guys that stuck around and it never worked out. Okay. So he left. Well, like the ticker tape parade lasted for about 10 days. And literally a week and a half, 2 weeks later, he's sitting there in Starbucks and he's going, okay, I get millions of dollars in the bank. I don't ever have to work again. I basically sold my team and my company to somebody else, and like, dang, I don't have anything to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he literally went into this crisis. Like, who am I? And what do I do now? You know, then he tries to start another business and it's really hard and it doesn't work out. Like, and it's like, he doesn't have any friends and like, he can't go to the church potluck and complain about this, you know, this is, you know,
right.
right. And it really took him a good year and a half or more to get himself sorted out. Now he's got this other company and he's growing it and he's excited. But the truth was, he was not happy being a rich fat guy sitting on a yacht.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all. And I reached out to this other guy I know who also sold an SAS company. And the last time I saw him, I've talked to him numerous times on the phone, but the last time I actually physically saw him, I happened to run into him in the Bahamas, I think it was. And he was on a yacht with his wife and his two friends, and they were sailing around. Like, the guy got rich and bought a yacht. I emailed him a link to this Casey conversation. I said, hey, is this experience anything like yours?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, yeah, like to a T.
Wow.
And in fact, Casey referred to some Harvard study where they followed some guys like this, and every one of them had one of these like post riches midlife crisis. Like, what the hell am I supposed to do now?
So, I mean, Perry, knowing what you know of these experiences and seeing them, you know, more than once, do you think that kind of with hindsight, the idea of selling the business, like, is that still the right move? And is it just about maybe preparing for the change that will come beforehand? Or is it potentially that these guys would have been better off continuing to run their business, you know, getting into a place where it's very profitable and just having that lifestyle? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have a whole bunch of perspectives about this because this has been rattling around in my head for a couple weeks now. And so one thing is, I don't think either one of these guys had another passion that they were pursuing, or a cause, or a thing in the world that they were trying to do, that selling the business would enable them to do more of or do better. Okay. Now, like when I compared, like, I'm working on a bunch of other stuff besides my business where, like, oh man, like, yeah, if I had an extra $1 million to throw into this project, man, go to town. Like, I could make a big long list of stuff that I would do. Right.
Sure.
I think if you have something like that, or maybe even have some other business that you're trying to grow or something, then I think it's a whole different thing. But if you think that getting a big pile of money is just going to make you happy, because you won't have any of those frustrations anymore, you're almost certainly wrong about that. I had some other thoughts about it. Another thought was, especially when you are in a service business, and you know, and maybe it's a really long day and there's some problems with some of the clients, and, you know, and you're wrangling over money with somebody, and, you know, somebody else is petulant and whining, and somebody else won't do the stuff you tell them to do. And, you know, and then like, you know, the kid breaks a window, and so you have to go fix that. It's really easy to go, man, this just sucks. And you can start to turn into just thinking everything very transactionally. Okay. Like, sure. Okay. So how many hours do I have to be on the phone today, and how many dollars I'm going to get? And like, when do I get to punch out and go to a restaurant? Right. So this is very common. And like I get into that mode too. And after listening to Casey, I said to Casey, so here you are now, you're back running a company, you're back to growing, you're back in your own groove, you're enjoying it. He says, yes. I said, so is it like you just feel good because you get to wake up in the morning and solve somebody's problem and be useful in the world? He says, yes. I get to wake up in the morning and solve somebody's problem and be useful. And the next day, you know, I think I had like a whole bunch of phone calls and a whole bunch of things. And it just put a little different spin on it. It's like, yeah, Perry,
sure,
you get to get out of bed, get on the phone, get on Skype, or go see somebody, go have lunch with somebody, help them solve their problem, help alleviate some pain, do some good in the world. You're useful. People need you and you need them. And this is good, right? And this is why I brought this whole thing up is that, you know, it really is a joy to serve other people. It really is a joy to solve problems. If you're a person who knows how to solve problems and you're really good at it, there's a line of people out your door waiting to, you know, and it gets kind of mundane after a while, but you just have to give yourself a shake and realize like this is a really good, wonderful thing that you get to do. You just sometimes lose a little perspective.
Yeah. It's all the mindset and how you look at things. I think this is a really great and important story. Certainly, I know a lot of people come up against this on a, you know, pretty regular basis. Like this, exactly what you share right now is I think something that all consultants encounter. I've certainly encountered it, and I think that we all even continue to encounter these challenges. But learning the lessons like you just shared helps us to put things into perspective, and then they become often easier to deal with, right? So the problems don't necessarily go away or the challenges don't go away, but it's just that we're more comfortable in handling. We've been there, we've done that before, and so now we kind of just, you know, we know how to deal with it, and we can get back to what we need to get back to faster than when they first arise.
Yeah, and the higher you climb, you find that the fewer and fewer people really actually understand your problems. Mm-hmm. And it is lonely at the top. And, yeah, like I've got all kinds of problems. I can't just like talk to people at the church potluck. And I find, you know, my really successful, wealthy friends have, you know, those kind of problems. And also, you know, there's kind of this I struggled for a really long time, like bologna sandwiches, ramen soup, sales and marketing did not come naturally to me. I'm naturally an engineer. Mm-hmm. Engineering and sales like think in completely opposite directions pretty much. And so I really struggled. And, you know, when I was, you know, scraping change out of my car seats just to buy a 79-cent burrito at Taco Bell, you know, it really seemed like, man, if I got out from under this problem, man, life would be really good. Well, when I got out from under that problem, life was a lot better, believe me. Mm-hmm. But it didn't solve all my problems. Okay. Sure. If you're worth $100 million or if you're worth negative $50,000, about at least a third of your problems are exactly the same as anybody. Like no difference, right? Except when you have a lot of money, it's like, boy, it really seems like I shouldn't have these problems. Well, why do you think that? I don't know, because I thought that people that had this much money didn't have problems like this. No, they do.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good message, Perry, because I think it just, again, puts things in perspective. Like oftentimes we're working towards, and, you know, people are working towards building their businesses for the idea of more income, more revenue, that somehow when you reach that level, things will be so much better. But they're not, you know, so they're focused on the destination and they're not really enjoying the journey. They're not really enjoying the day-to-days. And of course the day-to-day, there's ups and downs, but if you're doing as much as you can to enjoy the moment and everything that you're learning through the experience. I think then even when you get to that level that you've set that goal, in most cases, like I know in my experience, we set goals within our company, and then every time we hit that level, we just set like the bar higher and higher. So we're never actually satisfied with what we've achieved.
Right.
But because we're appreciating the process and celebrating the wins, it's then nice. Like, so we don't feel like, oh, we've got there and now what? We're still going to raise the bar probably to the next level, but we're doing it in a way where we're comfortable and, we're doing what we need to do to also enjoy the journey. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And there's also kind of another perspective that has been helpful to me. And I remember this is a realization I had when I first went from, just paddling really hard, just trying to make it to, wow, we have enough money. We could buy the Christmas presents that we want to buy. We can travel where we want to travel. I've suddenly, the noose is loosened a whole bunch and I have some options. And the realization was, well, just because you solved all your own problems doesn't mean everybody else solved their problems.
Definitely. Yeah, I know we could continue this conversation, Perry, because there's just so much that we could explore here, but I know we have to wind down on time. So I really want to thank you for coming on here and sharing with our audience, Perry. It's been a real pleasure. Where's the best place for people to go to find out more about your work?
The first and best place to go would be go to perrymarshall.com/8020. Get yourself a copy of 80/20 Sales and Marketing. It'll change your life. I mean, we haven't really talked too much about 80/20, but basically, if you can learn to see the 80/20s in any situation, you will never run out of consulting problems that you can solve. It's just like the ultimate, like Swiss Army knife of how to solve business problems. So yeah, it's a
fantastic book. Definitely go check it out.
Anybody, like the Google AdWords book, not necessarily for everybody. The Facebook book, not necessarily for everybody. I think the Google, the 80/20 book is pretty much for, if you work for a living, it's for you. So yeah. And Michael, thanks for having me on today. I mean, I really appreciate the kind of diversity and, not really too scripted and just being able to say what's on my heart today. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's been a real pleasure. So thank you, Perry.
Are you ready to take your consulting business to the next level? Learn more about the Accelerator Coaching Program at consultingsuccess.com.